All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to completely strip away the Hollywood fiction, the movies, and all the spooky lore to uncover the shocking historical truth behind the world's absolute most famous vampire.
You know, for well over a century now, pop culture has fed us this image of a gothic, cape-wearing monster, mostly thanks to Bram Stoker. But the reality? The real Vlad III was a flesh-and-blood 15th-century warlord, and his actual life makes those ghost stories look like a fairy tale. He was shaped by a desperate, lifelong fight for survival in an incredibly brutal world.
Section 1. The Man Behind the Myth. Let's explore exactly where this legendary name actually comes from.
So it all really starts with his father, Vlad II. In 1431, which, by the way, is the exact same year our Vlad was born, his dad was inducted into this highly prestigious militaristic group called the Order of the Dragon. It was created by the Holy Roman Emperor to defend Christian lands. Because of this massive honor, his father earned the surname Dracula, which literally meant dragon. So naturally, his son became Dracula, the son of the dragon. But you know how language evolves. Over time, in modern Romanian, Dracula took on a much darker translation, the devil.
But to truly understand how the son of the dragon became the architect of such historical nightmares, we need to look at Section 2, Hostage of Two Empires. Just imagine the geopolitical meat grinder this kid was born into. To the northwest, you have a massive Christian superpower in the Kingdom of Hungary. Over to the southeast, there's the absolutely unstoppable, expanding Muslim superpower of the Ottoman Empire. And right smack in the middle, caught directly in the crossfire, is Wallachia. It was definitely not a superpower. It was a highly volatile buffer state, just constantly getting trampled by these two massive empires fighting for control over Europe.
Born in 1431, young Vlad literally had his childhood shattered early on. By 1442, just to prove loyalty to the Turks, his father was forced to hand him and his younger brother over to the Ottoman Sultan as royal hostages. So for years, Vlad had to learn the arts of war while witnessing extreme brutality at the hands of his captors. Then in 1447, absolute tragedy struck. His father and older brother were overthrown and brutally assassinated. And the kicker? It wasn't by the Ottomans. It was by his own Wallachian nobles, backed by the Hungarians. Suddenly, he's a teenager who has lost absolutely everything.
Now, this captivity completely fractured his family. While Vlad's time as a hostage fueled this burning hatred and a vow of violent revenge, his younger brother Radu went in the exact opposite direction. Radu completely assimilated. He converted to Islam, became close friends with the future Sultan Mehmed II, and fully allied with the Ottoman Empire. You can imagine, this deeply personal betrayal just fueled Vlad's rage even further.
Moving on to Section 3. A Ruthless Rise to Power. So, how exactly does an exiled hostage actually claim a throne? Well, through sheer physical ruthlessness. After 9 long years of shifting alliances, brief exiles, and navigating the incredibly brutal politics of the region, Vlad finally got his revenge in 1456. He met his rival cousin on the battlefield, and Vlad didn't just sit back and order a hit from afar. He killed him himself, right there in hand-to-hand combat.
Once Vlad took power, he knew he had to keep it by any means necessary. He instituted a terrifying version of law and order. He rounded up the treacherous Wallachian nobles, the boyars who had betrayed his father, and had them impaled. It's a horrifying, agonizing execution method he likely witnessed while he was a hostage. He brutally cracked down on foreign Saxon merchants, used extreme bodily mutilations to punish anything from basic dishonesty to marital infidelity, and confiscated the wealth of his enemies to distribute to his absolute loyalists.
To put that level of fear into perspective, consider the famous anecdote of the Golden Cup. Imagine leaving a solid gold goblet just sitting out in the middle of a major city square today. Well, Vlad placed one right in the center of his capital city, Târgoviște, a city of 60,000 people. Anyone could use it to drink, but it absolutely could not leave the square. And during his entire reign, not a single person dared to steal it. That is the kind of terrifying obedience he commanded.
But ruling his own people with an iron fist is one thing. Section 4. War against the Ottomans. Now he was about to openly defy the most powerful military machine of his day.
By 1460, Sultan Mehmed II was demanding tribute. When emissaries arrived at Vlad's court, they refused to remove their turbans, citing their religious and cultural customs. Vlad simply informed them he would negotiate and, in a blunt, shocking act of defiance, he had their turbans literally nailed to their heads. Talk about a diplomatic incident, right? But he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew this guaranteed a massive Ottoman invasion.
And obviously, that invasion came. The numerical disadvantage here is just mind-boggling. Sultan Mehmed II marched toward Wallachia with an army estimated between 150,000 to 300,000 men. Vlad, on the other hand, could only muster about 30,000 fighters, conscripting poorly armed men, women, and even children. Fighting them on an open battlefield would have been an absolute suicide mission.
So facing impossible odds, Vlad resorted to an incredibly dark, highly strategic campaign of asymmetrical warfare just to survive. First, scorched earth. As he retreated, he burned his own crops and poisoned the wells, so the advancing Turks had zero resources. Second, an early form of biological warfare. He allegedly sent people infected with the bubonic plague, leprosy, and cholera directly into the path of the invaders. And finally, the famous night attack of 1462. Vlad used his fluent Turkish to actually infiltrate the Sultan's camp in disguise, later leading a devastating nighttime raid, attempting to assassinate the Sultan in his very own tent.
The Sultan actually survived that raid and kept marching, but what he found next completely broke his army's spirit. 20,000. That is the number of captured Ottoman soldiers and sympathizers that Vlad had impaled outside his capital city. This horrifying climax of psychological warfare, a literal forest of the impaled, so deeply sickened and terrified the Ottoman army that the Sultan literally ordered his men to pack up and turn back.
This brings us to Section 5, Downfall and Mysterious Death. Because winning that legendary battle definitely did not mean winning the war in the cutthroat politics of the 15th century.
Fleeing to Hungary for reinforcements later in 1462, Vlad was shockingly betrayed and imprisoned by the Hungarian king Matthias. For over a decade, the warlord was kept under house arrest while his brother Radu, the Ottoman collaborator, ruled Wallachia. Vlad finally managed a fleeting comeback, reclaiming the throne in 1476, but it just didn't last. By the winter of 1476 into 1477, his small army was completely crushed, and Vlad met a violent end in battle against the Ottomans.
And honestly, as if his life wasn't legendary enough, we have this absolutely eerie postscript. In 1931, archaeologists excavated what was long believed to be his tomb at the Snagov Monastery. They found remnants of a silk crown and aristocratic artifacts. The bones were moved to a museum in Bucharest, but then they mysteriously vanished, just gone. It's a perfect example of how the historical reality continues to blend seamlessly with the supernatural myth.
Which leads right into Section 6, Monster or National Hero. How do we even begin to appraise a figure with a history this bloody and polarized?
Context is absolutely everything here. Yes, the cruelty is undeniable, but Wallachia was caught in an apocalyptic religious and political crossfire. Changing leaders back then often meant mass slaughters from all sides. So Vlad was not some lone psychopath operating in a peaceful vacuum. His atrocities were extreme for sure, but he was very much a product of an exceptionally brutal, hyper-violent regional norm, where sheer terror was quite literally a prerequisite for survival.
The legacy you believe often really depends on who was writing the history. Over in Western Europe, the newly invented printing presses sensationalized his story, portraying him as a bloodthirsty, sadistic tyrant, which was, of course, perfect fodder for early horror stories. But to 19th century Romanian nationalists, he was heavily celebrated as a fierce, uncompromising national defender who somehow kept a massive invading empire at bay against completely impossible odds.
So, I'm turning it over to you, the jury. Was Vlad the Impaler simply a product of a hyper-violent era fighting for his very nation's survival using the only brutal tools available to him? Or was he a sadistic monster who fully deserves the dark, blood-soaked legacy attached to his name? Thank you so much for exploring this history with us today. Ponder the evidence and be sure to let us know your verdict.